Today we're focusing on emotional wellness, which is one of the most foundational dimensions of all of the 8 dimensions of wellness. Emotional wellness is often misunderstood. Many people think it means just being positive all the time or avoiding negative emotions. But emotional wellness isn't about forcing ourselves to feel good. It's about developing awareness of our emotions, understanding them, and learning how to respond to them in healthy and constructive ways. So for those of us who work in helping professions, emotional wellness becomes even more important. Supporting families, working with complex situations, and holding space for others' experiences can be incredibly meaningful work, but it can also carry a real emotional load. Emotional wellness helps protect our ability to care for others without losing ourselves in the process. So today we're going to explore what emotional wellness actually is, why emotions play such an important role in our mental and physical health, how emotional awareness works, practical strategies for managing difficult emotions, and ways to strengthen emotional resilience over time. So the goal is not to eliminate emotions because that's impossible. The goal is to develop a healthier relationship with them. Let's begin with a clear definition. Emotional wellness is the ability to recognize, understand, express, and manage emotions in a way that supports your health, your functioning, and your relationships. That sounds simple enough, but there's actually a lot inside of that definition. It means recognizing emotions instead of ignoring them. It means understanding that emotions often carry information. And it means expressing emotions in an appropriate way rather than suppressing them until they leak out sideways. And it means managing emotions with enough skill that they do not regularly control your behavior, exhaust your body, or damage those relationships. One of the biggest myths about emotional wellness is that emotionally well people, they just don't struggle very much. But that's simply not true. Emotionally well people still feel anxious. They still feel frustrated, and they still feel sad, disappointed, discouraged, hurt, irritated, and even overwhelmed. The difference is not that they avoid those emotions. The difference is that they tend to have a healthier relationship with them. They can feel anger without becoming cruel, stress without becoming completely consumed by it. They can feel sadness without assuming something is wrong with them for feeling sad. And they can feel disappointment without collapsing into hopelessness. So in other words, emotional wellness is not the absence of emotional pain. It's the presence of emotional capacity. It's the ability to say, this is hard, and I can stay with myself through it. Let me give you a realistic example. Imagine a home visitor who has had a very full week. One family is in crisis, another has multiple missed visits, a supervisor has requested documentation updates, and then there are deadlines piling up. And on top of that, something personal at home has already been weighing on them. Then, during a meeting, someone makes a quick comment that sounds critical. Maybe it was not even meant that way, but it lands hard. Now, in that moment, several things can happen internally. The person may feel embarrassed, irritated, defensive, and depleted, all at once. If their emotional wellness is low, that moment might become the tipping point. They may shut down, ruminate for hours, question their competence, or carry resentment into the rest of the day. But if their emotional wellness is stronger, the same person may still feel hurt or frustrated, but they are more likely to notice what is happening inside. They may think, "Whew, that really hit a nerve. I think I'm already overloaded, and that comment landed on top of everything else." Just that awareness creates options. Without emotional wellness, emotions often become automatic reactions. But with it, emotions become information that we can work with. Another way to think about emotional wellness is that it helps us create internal steadiness, not perfection, not numbness, not constant calm, steadiness. That steadiness becomes incredibly important in roles where other people depend on you. Because when your internal world feels chaotic or neglected, it becomes harder to stay present, patient, clear, and compassionate. And when your emotional world is supported, even imperfectly, it becomes easier to think clearly, communicate well, recover from hard moments, and keep your sense of self intact. Now, let's talk about why emotions matter so much, not just psychologically, but biologically. Emotions are not just something that we have, they are whole body experiences. When you feel something strongly, your brain, nervous system, hormones, muscles, breathing, and even your heart rate are all involved. That means emotions do not only live in your thoughts, they show up in your body. For example, think about what happens when you are stressed. Sometimes stress is experienced as racing thoughts, but sometimes it can also feel like tight shoulders, shallow breathing, a clenched jaw, an upset stomach, headaches, fatigue, or a sense that your body is always bracing for something. That is because the brain is constantly scanning for cues of safety and threat. When something feels stressful, uncertain, painful, or even overwhelming, the brain can activate a survival response. And that response is designed to help protect us. It speeds things up. It prepares the body to react. This is really helpful when we truly need to respond to danger. But the nervous system does not only react to physical threats. It can also react to interpersonal stress, criticism, overwhelm, uncertainty, conflict, and emotional strain. So if someone opens an email and immediately sees a message that feels critical, their body may begin reacting before they have even consciously processed the words. If someone walks into a tense meeting where there is obvious frustration in the room, their body may pick up on that tension right away. If someone has been carrying unresolved stress for weeks, their baseline nervous system state may already be elevated. And this matters because when the nervous system is activated, it becomes harder to access the thoughtful, reflective parts of ourselves. It becomes harder to be patient, harder to listen, pause, make balanced decisions, harder to remember what we actually want to say. That is not a character flaw. It is a nervous system under strain. And when we do not understand that, we often judge ourselves harshly. We think, oh, why am I reacting like this? Or why can't I just stay calm? But emotional wellness is not about demanding that the body never react. It's about learning to recognize the reaction and work with it. That's why emotional wellness needs to include the body, not just the mind. We cannot think our way out of every emotional state. Sometimes we have to slow down enough to notice that our body is carrying the emotion too. And the opposite is also true. Positive emotions matter physiologically as well. Moments of connection, gratitude, relief, safety, calm, laughter, and meaning can help regulate our nervous systems. Now, they're not going to erase stress, but they do help create recovery. And this is important because many people assume emotional wellness means managing only our negative emotions. But it also means intentionally making room for restorative emotions too. It means noticing when something feels grounding. It means allowing joy without any guilt. It means receiving a moment of peace instead of rushing past it. Those moments matter because the body needs signals of safety just as much as it responds to signals of stress. Emotional intelligence and emotional wellness are deeply connected. In many ways, emotional intelligence is the skill set, and emotional wellness is the outcome. So EI, or emotional intelligence, refers to our ability to recognize, understand, and manage our own emotions, while also being able to recognize and respond effectively to the emotions of others. Emotional wellness, on the other hand, reflects how we are actually doing in that process, how balanced, steady, and supported we feel emotionally over time. When EI is strong, emotional wellness just naturally tends to follow. So, for example, someone with high emotional intelligence is more likely to notice early signs of stress or overwhelm. So instead of pushing through or ignoring those signals, they are able to pause, identify what they're feeling, and respond in a way that supports their well-being. So whether that's taking a break, setting a boundary, or asking for support. That ability to recognize and respond creates a buffer against burnout and emotional exhaustion. EI also plays a key role in how we navigate relationships, which are a major contributor to emotional wellness. Being able to read emotional cues, communicate clearly, and respond with empathy can reduce conflict and increase connection. Now, in contrast, when emotional intelligence is low, misunderstandings and reactive communication can create unnecessary stress, strain relationships, and negatively impact overall emotional health. In helping professions especially, EI becomes essential. You are often holding space for others' emotions while managing your own internal responses at the same time. Emotional intelligence allows you to do this with greater awareness and intention, to be present and compassionate without becoming overwhelmed or absorbing everything around you. It helps you stay grounded, even in emotionally charged situations. Ultimately, emotional intelligence strengthens emotional wellness by giving you more choice. Instead of being driven by automatic reactions, you develop the ability to respond in ways that align with your values, your goals, and your capacity. And over time, those small intentional responses build a stronger sense of emotional balance, resilience, and well-being. One of the most important skills in emotional wellness is emotional awareness. This is really the foundation of your emotional wellness. Much like mindfulness, this simply means noticing what we are feeling as it happens. And not only what we are feeling, but trying to tune into what others are feeling as well. Because your emotions aren't the only thing that impacts your wellness. Others' emotions do as well. It sounds simple, but many people struggle to notice their own feelings. And there are several reasons for that. First of all, many of us were not taught emotional awareness growing up. We were encouraged to keep it together and keep a stiff upper lip. We were taught that crying was showing weakness, and we may have learned to ignore emotions, suppress them, or even push through them. If emotional wellness has a starting place, it's emotional awareness. This awareness means being able to notice what you are feeling while it is happening instead of only noticing it after it has already built up. And it sounds easy until you actually try to do it consistently. A lot of us just aren't connected to our emotional experience. We may know that we're stressed in a general sense, but not recognize the more specific layers underneath. We may not notice when stress turns into resentment, or when disappointment turns into discouragement, or when constant busyness becomes emotional numbness. We just weren't taught how to be emotionally aware. We may have learned to stay productive instead of reflective, or to dismiss feelings and just keep going. Now, growing up, certain emotions were unacceptable, dramatic, weak, inconvenient, or even unsafe to express. And because of how many of us were raised, instead of becoming fluent in our emotional lives, we became really good at moving past our emotions. And in helping professions, that tendency can get reinforced even more. When other people need you, you learn to stay functional. You learn to keep the appointment, answer the email, solve the problem, make the call, write the note, attend the meeting, and just move on to the next thing. But being functional is not the same as being emotionally well. Here's a story that might sound familiar. A staff member has been telling herself for weeks that, oh, she's fine. I'm fine. She's busy, but she's fine. Tired, but fine. Oh, a little stressed, but it's nothing unusual. So she just keeps moving. She handles what needs to be handled. Then one afternoon, something small happens. Maybe it's just her computer freezing, or someone is asking for one more thing. Or maybe a family cancels at the last minute after a day she had carefully planned. Suddenly, she feels tears rising, or irritation that seems way out of proportion to the moment. Why? Because the small event is not really the whole story. The emotional buildup has been there for a while. She just had not slowed down enough to notice it. This is why awareness matters so much. It helps us catch ourselves earlier. Earlier might mean noticing, I've been carrying frustration since that meeting this morning. Or, I'm not just tired, I'm discouraged. Or, I've been feeling emotionally flat for days. That kind of awareness creates opportunity because once something is noticed, it can be addressed. Another important piece of emotional awareness is expanding our emotional vocabulary. Many people, we just default to a handful of words. It's either, oh, I'm stressed, or fine, I'm mad, overwhelmed. Now, all of those are real, but sometimes they are too broad to help us fully understand what is happening. So sometimes stressed might actually mean pressured or burdened, mentally overloaded, emotionally drained, overstimulated, worried, undersupported, and etc. Angry might actually mean hurt, dismissed, disrespected, disappointed, powerless, resentful. Really, the more accurately we can name what we feel, the better we can respond to it. This is why the phrase, name it to tame it, is so powerful. When we label what we are experiencing, it often becomes less foggy and less overwhelming. Not always easy, but clearer. Sometimes the emotional shift really begins when we stop saying, I'm a mess, and start saying something like, I'm feeling disappointed, overloaded, and a little underappreciated. That is something you can work with. Emotional awareness also includes noticing how emotions start to show up physically. So for some people, anxiety might feel like restlessness or a tight chest. Sometimes frustration can feel like heat in the face or tension in the shoulders. For some, sadness feels heavy, slowed down, or even almost numb. The important part is that our body often notices emotion before the mind does. So that means that one helpful question for you can be, what is my body telling me right now? The body can become an early warning system if we are willing to listen. Another important part of emotional wellness is learning the difference between having an emotion and reacting from that emotion. Emotions happen quickly. Reactions often happen quickly too, but they are not the same thing. The feeling is the internal experience. The reaction is what we do next. And this distinction really matters because many people unconsciously treat emotion and reaction as if they are one event. So for example, I was mad, so I snapped. I was anxious, so I avoided it. I felt criticized, so I shut down. But there is almost always a space, even a really small one, between what we feel and what we do. And that space is where emotional wellness becomes visible. Let's use another example. So a team member might receive an email from a supervisor asking for a revision on something that they worked on. Let's say they worked pretty hard on it and it took them a while. The email they receive is brief and it may be in a neutral tone, but because the team member is already tired and sensitive, it lands as criticism. So now they might feel embarrassed, frustrated, or even defensive. Now, if their reaction is immediate, they may send back a sharp reply, or vent to several coworkers, or even spiral into self-doubt for the rest of the day. But if they can pause long enough to separate the feeling from the reaction, something changes. They can say internally, I'm feeling defensive right now. I think this email maybe hit me in a tender space. That one moment of awareness does not erase the feeling, but it creates room to breathe, to wait, and to choose. Maybe they still feel frustrated, but instead of replying right away, they step away for 10 minutes. Then they reread the email and realize, maybe it wasn't as harsh as they first thought. Maybe they decide to ask for clarification instead of assuming the worst. That pause matters. In emotional wellness work, we are not trying to eliminate emotion. We are trying to widen the gap between emotion and impulsive reaction. So a helpful phrase here is feel the feeling, slow the reaction. Feeling is human, and reaction can be intentional. Emotional wellness invites you to pause before acting from your first urge. And that pause could sound like this internally. Ooh, I'm feeling activated. I want to react, but I need to ground first. Then perhaps they slow their tone, respond more neutrally, or return to the conversation later. The point is not to suppress the emotion. It's to keep the emotion from instantly becoming behavior that makes the situation worse. That is a huge shift. And it's also where practice matters, because the pause does not always come naturally at first. Sometimes it has to be built. One simple tool you can use here is this sequence. Pause, breathe, notice, choose. Pause is interrupting the automatic flow. Breathing brings the nervous system down even slightly. Noticing, meaning identify what is actually happening inside. And then choose, meaning to ask, how do I want to respond here? This can be used in meetings, difficult conversations, parenting moments, traffic, email, conflict, disappointment, just about anywhere else that emotion arises. It sounds simple, but simple does not mean easy. It's a practice of reclaiming choice. Once we become more aware of emotions, the next step is regulation. Emotional regulation means helping ourselves move through emotional states in ways that are healthy, grounded, and constructive. And this is important. Regulation does not mean suppression. Suppressing emotions is when we shove them down, deny them, or act like they aren't there. Regulation is different. Regulation says, this is here, and I'm going to respond to it skillfully. A lot of people only think about emotional regulation after they are already overwhelmed. But ideally, regulation becomes something we practice regularly, not just in crisis moments. Let's walk through a few regulation strategies with examples. First, regulating through the body. So as we talked about earlier, emotions live in the body too. So sometimes the fastest way to calm an emotional state is not through analysis, but through physical regulation. This might mean slowing your breathing, dropping your shoulders, unclenching your jaw, standing up and stretching, taking a brief walk, even just putting both feet on the floor, stepping outside for fresh air, or even just looking outside at the greenery. These are not silly little tricks. They are ways of signaling to the nervous system that it can come down a notch. Second, regulating through thought. Sometimes emotions intensify because of the story attached to them. So for example, an emotion might begin with disappointment, but then thoughts pile on like, this always happens, nothing is getting better, I can't do this, nobody notices how hard this is. Those thoughts are understandable, but they can escalate the emotional state. Regulation through thought does not mean fake positivity. It means more balanced thinking. Something like, this is really frustrating right now. Or this is a hard moment, but it's not the whole story. Or I'm feeling discouraged, but I do not need to decide everything from this feeling. Or that comment bothered me, but I want to make sure I am interpreting it accurately. Balanced thoughts help keep emotions from turning into emotional avalanches. Third, regulate through expression. Some emotions need room to move. That may happen through talking with a trusted person, journaling, voice noting your thoughts, praying, crying, or even sitting quietly and just letting yourself feel what is there without rushing to fix it. A lot of people move too quickly into productivity after emotional strain. They have a hard day, and then they immediately push into chores, work, caretaking, or numbing. But regulation often requires a moment of processing. So for example, someone ends a difficult day with several emotionally heavy visits. Instead of going straight into dinner prep while pretending nothing happened, they sit in the car for a few minutes and let themselves acknowledge, that was a lot. I'm carrying sadness and stress from today. Maybe they take a breath. Maybe they pray. Maybe they cry for a minute or call someone. That short pause helps the emotion move rather than harden. And then finally, regulating through permission. This one is often overlooked. Sometimes, regulation begins by giving yourself permission to feel what you feel without immediately judging it. So for example, it makes sense that I feel disappointed. It makes sense that I'm tired. It makes sense that this stirred something in me. Judgment tends to intensify emotions. Permission tends to soften them. Not because permission is indulgence, but because it reduces the second layer of suffering that comes from telling ourselves we should not feel what we feel. Emotional resonance and emotional absorption are two distinct ways we engage with the emotions of others. Emotional resonance occurs when we empathize with someone's feelings, recognizing and validating their emotions without losing our sense of stability. It allows us to be present and supportive while maintaining emotional boundaries, making it a healthy form of connection. Now, in contrast, emotional absorption happens when we take on another person's emotions as if they were our own, blurring those lines between their experience and our own well-being. This can lead to emotional exhaustion, stress, and difficulty maintaining objectivity. While emotional resonance fosters compassionate and effective support, emotional absorption can drain our energy and hinder our ability to provide meaningful help. Learning to resonate without absorbing allows for deeper, more sustainable connections with others. Empathy is a cornerstone in the home visiting field, enabling professionals to connect deeply with clients while fostering trust and rapport. However, unchecked empathy can lead to emotional overextension. Empathy is one of the most valuable tools in our work. It allows us to understand and validate our clients' experiences. But empathy has a flip side. When we over-identify with someone's emotions, we can start to absorb their feelings as our own. Over-identification can lead to emotional exhaustion, stress, and even burnout. Over-identifying can also make it difficult for you to maintain objectivity and professionalism, and it can increase feelings of helplessness. So it's really important to maintain a healthy balance, connecting with clients without losing your sense of self or perspective. Emotional resonance and emotional absorption are two distinct ways we engage with the emotions of others. Emotional resonance occurs when we empathize with someone's feelings, recognizing and validating their emotions without losing our sense of stability. It allows us to be present and supportive while maintaining emotional boundaries, making it a healthy form of connection. Now, in contrast, emotional absorption happens when we take on another person's emotions as if they were our own, blurring those lines between their experience and our own well-being. This can lead to emotional exhaustion, stress, and difficulty maintaining objectivity. While emotional resonance fosters compassionate and effective support, emotional absorption can drain our energy and hinder our ability to provide meaningful help. Learning to resonate without absorbing allows for deeper, more sustainable connections with others. Empathy is a cornerstone in the home visiting field, enabling professionals to connect deeply with clients while fostering trust and rapport. However, unchecked empathy can lead to emotional overextension. So how do you protect yourself from over-identifying? Here's an analogy. Think of yourself as a lighthouse. Your job is to provide guidance and light, not to join the ships in the turbulent waters. If you join those ships, you have a very good chance of sinking and not being of help to anyone. We don't typically think of our clients or peers as people we need protection from, but you have to understand, you are likely a naturally empathetic person, or you wouldn't be in this line of work in the first place. And most of the issues you see or deal with on a daily basis are heavily emotionally charged. So if you think about the fact that we are all made of energy, vibrating at different frequencies all day long, it starts to make sense that you might need to protect your little bubble of peace. It starts to make sense that you might need to protect your little bubble of peace when going into these charged situations or conversations. And it really isn't the person you need protection from, it's the energy they are emitting. We've touched on this before, but energy is contagious, so someone's emotions are no different. So here are some steps. Recognize the difference between resonance and absorption. Understand that you can feel with someone without feeling for them. Say that again. Understand that you can feel with someone without feeling for them. Emotional resonance allows you to connect while maintaining your own emotional stability. Grounding techniques. Engage in practices that keep you anchored in your energy, such as breathing, visualization, or even physical grounding like touching a textured object or planting your feet firmly on the ground. You want to set intentional boundaries. So before entering any emotionally charged situations, remind yourself, I can support without absorbing. Visualizing a protective barrier like a bubble or a light surrounding you can help reinforce this boundary. You want to also practice mindful observation. So, rather than internalizing someone else's emotions, practice observing them as an outsider. Instead of saying, I feel their pain, shift to, I witness their pain and offer support. And then really try to limit exposure when necessary. If certain environments or individuals consistently drain your emotional energy, allow yourself space. Taking breaks or limiting time spent in high-intensity emotional spaces is an act of self-care, not selfishness. You also want to release emotional residue. After engaging with someone's strong emotions, engage in cleansing activities like journaling, meditating, taking a shower, or spending time in nature to reset your emotional state. And then finally, you want to develop a self-compassion ritual. Remind yourself you are not responsible for fixing others' emotions. Practicing affirmations like, I offer support, but their healing is their own journey, can help prevent emotional over-identification. So by strengthening these protective habits, empaths can provide deep support without being overwhelmed or depleted. Building emotional resilience is critical. And this is the ability to recover, adapt, and continue forward after stress, disappointment, or emotional strain. It does not mean that you are unaffected. It means you are able to come back. I think that's an important reframe because many people assume that resilience means toughness or invulnerability, but often resilience is much quieter than that. It may look like taking a hit emotionally, feeling it honestly, and then slowly finding your footing again. Or it may look like not handling something perfectly, but repairing and continuing. Or asking for support instead of pretending that you are fine. It can also look like resting before you are completely depleted. Resilience is often built through small, repeated acts of recovery. That is resilience. Not a perfect attitude, not a forced smile, resilience. Resilience grows through supportive relationships, healthy coping tools, meaning, perspective, and self-awareness. It also grows through remembering that hard moments are not permanent identities. Feeling discouraged does not mean you are failing. Feeling emotionally tired does not mean that you are weak. Needing support does not mean that you are not resilient. Sometimes it means the opposite. It means that you are wise enough to care for yourself before you collapse. Emotional resilience is a cornerstone of emotional wellness because it really determines how we move through difficulty, not whether we experience it. Challenges, stress, and emotional ups and downs are a part of being human, especially in demanding roles like the helping professions. Emotional wellness isn't built by avoiding those experiences. It's built by developing the capacity to recover, adapt, and continue forward without becoming overwhelmed or depleted. Without emotional resilience, difficult moments tend to linger longer and feel heavier. A stressful interaction, a challenging case, or a tough day doesn't just stay contained. It can spill into other areas of life, affecting mood, focus, sleep, and relationships. Over time, This accumulation can lead to emotional exhaustion or burnout. And that emotional resilience acts as a kind of internal buffer, helping you process those experiences, release what you don't need to carry, and return to a more balanced state. This resilience also allows for flexibility in how we interpret and respond to situations. Instead of getting stuck in patterns of self-criticism, frustration, or helplessness, resilient individuals are more able to step back, gain perspective, and shift their response. This doesn't mean minimizing what's hard. It means recognizing that even in difficult moments, there are choices in how we respond. That flexibility is key to maintaining emotional stability over time. In the context of your work, emotional resilience is what helps you continue showing up with care and compassion, even when the work itself is emotionally demanding. It allows you to be present with others without losing your sense of self. It helps you hold space for difficult experiences without absorbing them fully. And perhaps most importantly, it supports the ability to recover at the end of the day, so that stress does not accumulate in ways that become unsustainable. Ultimately, emotional resilience is not about being unaffected by stress. It's about being able to bend without breaking. It strengthens emotional wellness by helping you navigate life's challenges with greater steadiness, recover more quickly, and maintain your capacity to care, connect, and function over the long term. Self-compassion is the practice of treating yourself with the same kindness, patience, and understanding you would offer to someone else who is struggling. That sounds simple, but many people do find it surprisingly hard, especially caring, high-responsibility people. Often they are excellent at compassion outwardly and very harsh inwardly. They can look at someone else and say, "Of course you're overwhelmed. You're carrying a lot." But when it comes to themselves, the voice changes. "I should be handling this better. Why am I so emotional? Ugh, I need to get over it. I don't have time for this." Self-compassion interrupts that harshness. It does not mean making excuses or avoiding responsibility. It means responding to yourself in a way that actually supports your own healing and growth. Self-compassion supports emotional wellness because it gives us a softer place to land when life is hard or when we fall short. And all of us fall short sometimes. Self-compassion is the practice of treating yourself with the same kindness, patience, and understanding you would offer to someone else who is struggling. That sounds simple, but many people do find it surprisingly hard, especially caring, high-responsibility people. Often they are excellent at compassion outwardly and very harsh inwardly. They can look at someone else and say, "Of course you're overwhelmed. You're carrying a lot." But when it comes to themselves, the voice changes. "I should be handling this better. Why am I so emotional? Ugh, I need to get over it. I don't have time for this." Self-compassion interrupts that harshness. It does not mean making excuses or avoiding responsibility. It means responding to yourself in a way that actually supports your own healing and growth. Self-compassion supports emotional wellness because it gives us a softer place to land when life is hard or when we fall short. And all of us fall short sometimes. Emotional wellness is not about controlling every feeling. It is not about becoming endlessly calm, endlessly patient, or endlessly positive. It is about building a healthier relationship with your emotional life, becoming more aware of what is happening inside of you, creating a little more space between feeling and reacting. And it is about learning how to support your nervous system, express what needs expression, set boundaries where they are needed, and return to yourself with compassion when things feel heavy. And that matters, because your emotional wellness affects how you live, how you lead, how you connect, how you recover, and how sustainably you can continue showing up for the people who count on you. You do not need to master all of this at once. In fact, emotional wellness is not really something we master. It is something that we practice. It may look like noticing tension in your body earlier, or naming a feeling more accurately, pausing before sending the email, taking 5 breaths before a difficult conversation, telling yourself the truth. I'm carrying a lot right now, and I need care too. Those are not small things. Those are the building blocks of emotional wellness.